There's a real difference between talking about spiritual friendship or relationships or the importance of Sangha and finding methods for creating liberating connections through experiential learning, embodied practice in relating. This requires what Jeffrey Cohen calls situation crafting. That is, creating environments and situations that can foster genuine meeting, trust, mutual respect, and most importantly, a sense of belonging.
Did we read this? I know I've read it before.
Hmm.
I don't think so. Do you remember it, Melissa?
I don't remember it.
Okay. I don't know. Now that I teach these exercises, it's sometimes difficult to remember the first time I experienced them. However, one thing stands out in my memory as a life-changing event. The exercise was given during an intensive, as most often they were. Our bodies and hearts had been softened by the oceanic force of Zazen, which inexplicitly, just a second, and wonderfully had, wave by wave, revealed our true nature. We were given the simple instructions to sit face to face with another person and ask relatively basic questions. Questions like, what is your name? Or in what town were you born? After the question was asked, our only job was to sit until we arrived at a place where we could truly reply, I don't know. Simply enough, I thought. Simple enough, I thought. Melissa.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I sat across from a gentle bear of a man whose full beard reminded me of my recently deceased father. As we turned into one another's gaze, I felt a shift in my perception. I remember wondering if I could treat this person with the same respect, love, and admiration I had for my dad, just as an experiment. He began by asking, "Are you a woman?" I was silent on the outside. I strongly identify as a woman, not knowing this felt like a leap. Just moments before, I had projected my father's form onto him, and now he asked if I was a woman. I remember feeling a slight flush of incredulity, and a habitual reaction I have now become familiar with.
You're muted, Peg.
As I sat and connected to myself and this person across from me simultaneously, I began to see the world around me seemingly dissolve. And from this place, I could see that at an atomic level, we were connected. And then I realized that we are connected through the air we breathe. We have been simultaneously breathing the same air on our planet since life began. Oxygen flowed into my lungs and back out, just in time to enter his lungs and back out. The space between us was not as permanent as I had thought, and my female body was not all that separate from his male body. And then it occurred to me that I didn't know what these constructs were for. With a gentle smile, I replied, I don't know. I felt a moment of freedom and penetrating wisdom in this not to moment. I rested in the understanding that not knowing is most intimate. Let's go ahead and we can finish this last part.
Starlet.
As we continued to exercise, I realized that I had more spacious attitude and a more open heart toward the person sitting across me than I ever imagined possible. Despite our differences, which moments ago felt obvious, I could sense and perceive an interconnectedness. This, in turn, allowed kindness and compassion to move through me, through us. through the relating. Jessica S., Sangha member.
We need to make it safe to explore, to experiment, to engage with each other openly, to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, and even to fail. It was kind of amazing to us how much willingness people brought to this effort, how captivated they were with each other, how readily and sincerely they joined in. And in turn, for all of us, this development heartened and strengthened our meditation practice and our capacity to use our lives as fuel for practice rather than as a distraction from it.
So let's look a little more closely at some of the methods that we adopted for our work together with the Sangha and the forms of encounter they enabled. Where did these practices come from? Some were drawn from our training in Akomi, Right Use of Power, Internal Family Systems, Joanna Macy's work that connects. Some were drawn from our professional experiences as a psychotherapist and a teacher, but many were creative inspirations, a sense of what the Sangha needs right now, or a flash of insight. The success of such efforts depends on the Sangha's willingness, generosity of spirit, and a bit of courage. But these qualities too are fostered by the kindness in which they are held.
The vignette opening this chapter is one example of small experiments in mindfulness and connection. We have used in I'm sorry. We have used in Dharma talks, intensive and classes. Here are two more. The first is drawn from our Hakomi training. The second is actually that originated with the Quakers, naming present moment experience.
Participants count off to create groups of 3. The groups move apart far enough so that they cannot hear each other. At Appamada, one group might go to the kitchen, another to the study, one the side room, one on the back porch, for example. Each group decides who will go first, second, and third, and who will be keeping track of the time. They sit facing each other and take turns being the speaker and being listeners. The speaker simply names their present moment experience softly in simple verbs as it is happening. Breathing, hearing a bird, remembering this morning, heart beating, and so on. The speaker continues for about 3 minutes, each person taking a turn speaking while the others listen. Afterwards, they spend about 10 minutes discussing together their experiences, both before returning to the main group. Then there are any reports people would like to share with the group.
Walk and talk. This activity is flexible in timing the length of each segment. Here's a typical way we offer it. Participants are in pairs, walking side by side outside in any direction they choose, or if the conditions don't allow for that, sitting together. They begin with 5 minutes of silence, simply walking or sitting. Then each partner in turn will have 10 minutes during which they may talk, keep silence, or do some of each. They may say anything they wish. The other partner simply listens without interruption or questions. After each person has had 10 minutes to speak, the pair continue walking or sitting together with 5 minutes of silence. They find a place to sit down, then and discuss the experience for about 10 minutes before returning to the main group. Again, there are reports of anything someone would like to share with the whole group.
It's important to introduce this activity carefully,
Any activity.
any activity carefully. Once we describe it, we note that it is also fine to sit the exercise out and serve as an observer. Later, we'll be asking these observers about their own experience observing and what they noticed. In any activity, there are no wrong experiences, even if nothing happens or they don't feel anything. Any experience is just data, information for the use of the person experiencing it. We don't offer analysis or interpretation of anyone's experience. We don't build a case for a belief about oneself or others. We do offer support for allowing the experience to be just whatever it is: sad, frustrating, supportive, healing, surprising, and meeting it with kindness and curiosity and space. It's important not to rush through an activity to get it done, but to respect and work with experiences that may even slow things down. Often, those are the most illuminating moments. Any sign of impatience is unkind.
It's just so amazing, the 10-minute walk. That's the most powerful activity for me. And I think it's just the fact that someone's listening
Yeah.
makes so much difference that normally doesn't occur.
And that you don't get interrupted or ask questions.
Hmm.
Okay.
My turn. Almost all of these kinds of experiments in mindfulness end with a whole group discussion and reporting from participants. And this too is connecting for the Sangha as a whole. These small moments of connection foster a sense of belonging, of being seen and appreciated. Each person's experience is valid, unique, interesting, and it is an invitation to be genuinely curious about another's experience, a moment that builds empathy. To be truly seen, accepted, and valued is such a primary need that even such brief experience can be deeply nourishing.
I like that. The pairs and small group experiments in mindfulness sow the seeds of mutual respect and friendship. Reporting back to the whole group fosters appreciation for our diversity and our friendly curiosity that builds a culture of care for each other. When we know and, and like everyone or two other people, we begin to feel a sense of belonging.
The learning in this way is inductive, derived from the lived experience of participants. The role of the teacher or facilitator is to help draw the connections between what is discovered or explored and our Zen practice and Dharma teachings. The reasoning proceeds from data to understanding, bottom up. This is counter to the typical form of teaching using deductive reasoning, as when a Dharma teacher gives a talk about the Dharma and students endeavor to apply the teachings in their own lives, top down. In actual practice at Appamada, we use both of these approaches in our teaching.
In facilitating these small experiments in mindfulness, it's extremely important not to dismiss, invalidate, or devalue any participant's experience. An unexpected grief that wells up, a provocative question, doubt, or skepticism about the activity need to be kindly and honestly met. The way difficult situations are handled is itself a teaching for the group, where a whole subtext of silent questions are simmering. Is it safe here? Will I be criticized, shamed, or blamed? What is it that is wrong to do or say here? What happens if I mess up? How dangerous is it to show my real self? And most importantly, Is this kindness real or just for show? Do we pretend here?
So the way leaders relate to each person and to the group has a profound and enduring influence, not only on an individual, but the emerging culture of the Sangha. A moment of irritation or judgment or criticism is a blow to the formation of trust and mutual care between individuals and the Sangha as a whole.
Do we want to go back and get this
Yeah.
facing
Yeah.
page? Mhm. Hi, Milan.
I'm
Hello. Hello. Sorry, I'm late.
No problem. You'll be, as usual, after Melissa.
Could we go a little bit higher so we can see the photo?
There is no photo. Oh, there is. I'm wrong.
That's from the previous
That's the
page.
previous one. That's Leela. Leela.
I recall an experience during one of the integrated intensives at Appamada where the participating Sangha members were asked to go on a walk and talk with another person in the neighborhood surrounding the Zendo. I believe this was near the end of the intensive week, perhaps on day 4 or so, and we had all been sitting in silent meditation for many hours, and although I tend to find Zazen meditation very nourishing, I was looking forward to some time moving my body outside on a pleasant day after extended time on the cushion.
We were paired by random selection, and I was grateful to have been paired with my good friend and longtime senior Sangha member, R. The walk and talk format is an extension of our Zen practice, whereby we adhere to the forms of timing and cadence. After walking side by side in silence for a period of minutes, one person begins to speak while the other listens. There are no verbal responses from the listener, only embodied attunement and engaged listening as both persons walk together. Then the speaker becomes the listener and the listener the speaker. After a time, both are free to speak in ordinary conversation for a time before returning to the Zendo and the group sitting practice.
The format, is it me?
Mhm.
The format is deceptive simple, but the experience was profound. After that much time in silent meditation, I was eager to connection and companionship. The instruction not to reflexively respond verbally, but simply be with. The other allows for a kind of embodied connection that is truly rare in our ordinary lives. I don't recall the content of the conversation, but I do remember the vivid and rich feeling of being fully witnessed and then witnessing another. Although I've known R a long time, having worked together on the Appamada board for years, along as with many other contexts, in this exercise, I felt I saw her in different light, somehow witnessing her basic goodness, her Buddha nature more easily than in other settings, where my mind may not have been so open to the rich tapestry of the person walking next to me.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to reflect on this practice opportunity, and it is only one of the many I have had the great fortune to experience at Appamada. The relational component of our practice has helped me to truly understand and experience the treasure of Sangha in a way I never would have thought possible. John Eric S., Sangha member and board member. We still have a little bit from that page, that last little paragraph. Yeah, started. So the way the leaders.
No, I think she read that.
Mhm.
Didn't you, Anne? Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. I did. We ended with it turns out.
Okay, it turns out okay. There we go.
It turns out that spiritual friendship doesn't take years and years or the magic of some charismatic leader. It actually depends on moments, flashes of true connection woven into the life of the community, the moments described by Jeffrey Cohen as situations. These well designed, mindful situations can become a shared practice as fundamental to the Zen path as Zazen, the path of awakening together with all being. And it turns out we can design for such moments. In fact, we build community from these building blocks, situation crafting, as Cohen puts it. But it all depends on the Sangha. Or, as Cherry Huber writes, there's a key, and the name of the key is willingness.
Still, sometimes we fail. The spiritual path can get rocky or steep at times. We doubt ourselves or the wisdom of our journey, and even the path itself. Teachers prove to be all too human, not the idealized, enlightened beings we imagined. Or our life circumstances throw us: the loss of a job, a marriage on the rocks, a frightening diagnosis. The Buddha, in his wisdom, recognized the hazards that can cause us to lose our way. Friendships are created out of moments of deep connection, repeated over time. Certainly, sitting meditation is one common element of spiritual friendship in Buddhism. Sitting in silence and stillness together embodies acceptance, calm, connection without words. Dharma talks, service, study, and classes provide a common language and concepts for wholesome conversation and inquiry, deepening not only our own insight and understanding, but our lively connections with each other.
The small experiments in mindfulness we began weaving into our teachings act as an accelerant for friendship. As people reveal a small moment of vulnerability and listen deeply to one or two others reveal their own vulnerability, the threads of trust, respect, mutual care, and appreciation are joined and strengthened. Reporting the discoveries from the experiments not only shares what was discovered, but creates a warm appreciation and connections that weave the fabric of Sangha. In this way, the Sangha comes to appreciate, not merely tolerate, differences and diversity, to become genuinely interested in each person. These attitudes of friendly curiosity, connection, and appreciation inevitably tend to permeate other relationships as well, in families, in workplaces, and neighborhoods. So our spiritual friendships nourish us, strengthen us, give us courage and compassion, and they help us meet the challenges and difficulties, not only of the spiritual path, but in our lives. We are not facing them alone, tossed and brokenhearted. We are held, supported, and comforted by this web of care. We are inspired and challenged by the example of others on the path. And also,
I should probably read the facing page up above.
Oh,
Up
that's
above. Yeah, there we go.
if wanderers who were members of other sects should ask you, what, I'm sorry, can't see that word.
Friend.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. What friends are the prerequisites for development of wings to self-awakening? You should answer, there is the case where the monk has admirable people as friends, companions, and colleagues. This is the first prerequisite for the development of the wings to self-awakening. Yeah.
And also,
It's lower. No, lower. The other way.
keep going, no, keep going, keep going, keep going.
And also,
And also, yeah. No,
there you go.
no, perfect.
Is it we are all imperfect?
Yes.
Thank you. We're all imperfect works in progress. Our conditioning and habits are durable and slow to work with. Inevitable, we all make mistakes. There will be disagreements, even conflicts between Sangha members because people. How these are handled is another teaching, another practice. It often involves the wise and skillful use of power in community.
Flint had introduced me to the profound work of Cedar Barstow and the right use of power. I found the concept, even the title, so captivating that I suggested we contact Cedar to invite her to speak at the Sangha. She offered to come to Austin and do a full training, and we hosted it at the Sangha in March 2013. I recognized how very important this training is for spiritual communities. Among other things, it provides a shared language and conceptual framework for open conversation about dynamics of power without shame or blame. It illuminates unhealthy power dynamics and the potential remedies for them. It provides healthy, caring methods for dealing with shame, with giving and receiving feedback, and dealing with our general blindness around issues of power. It offers a profound vision of the potential for the positive uses of power wisely, skillfully, and compassionately as responsibility and care. Most importantly, it teaches a process for repair in relationships because we all, without exception, make mistakes.
Starlet, I think.
Yes, I'm sorry. I found this work so important and so valuable that I continued to train with Cedar. Joined the faculty of the Right Use of Power Institute, and even provided this training in other sanghas and in workshops at conferences. At Appamada, we regularly offer this training for the sangha. It's required for new councils when they are formed to help council members understand the influence of their new roles in the sangha. When right use of power is completely woven into the Sangha's culture, so many difficulties and misunderstandings can be avoided entirely, and others can be met more wisely, skillfully, and compassionately. There's an overview of right use of power in Chapter 14, Tributaries.
That's going to be chapter 15 now. So let's read that.
Okay. You don't need a perfect Sangha. A family or community doesn't have to be perfect to be helpful. In fact, the Sangha at the time of the Buddha was not perfect. But it was enough for people to take refuge in, because in the Sangha there were enough people who had enough compassion, solidity, and insight to embrace others who did not have as much compassion, solidity, and insight. I also have some difficulties with my Sangha, but I'm very happy because everyone tries to practice in my Sangha.
If we lived in a Sangha where everyone was perfect, everyone was a Bodhisattva or a Buddha, that would be very difficult for us. Weakness in the other person is very important, and weakness within yourself is also very important. Anger is in us. Jealousy is in us. Arrogance is in us. These things are These kinds of things are very human. It is thanks to the presence of weakness in you and the weakness in a brother or sister that you learn how to practice. To practice is to have an opportunity to transform.
There are some people who think of leaving the Sangha when they encounter difficulties with other Sangha members. They cannot bear little injustices inflicted upon them because their hearts are small. To help you, to help your heart grow bigger and bigger, understanding and love are necessary. Your heart can grow as big as the cosmos. The growth of your heart is infinite. Thich Nhat Hanh, Friends on the Path.
The study of the Dharma complements and enriches our practice of zazen.
I think
Or it's the other
Yeah,
paragraph?
there we go.
Okay. Encounter with the Dharma. A Sangha is not just a place to learn about ourselves and make friends. However, it is also an encounter with the Dharma, the profound treasury of the teaching of the Buddha and Zen ancestors. They are the foundation of the healthy Sangha and its moral compass. Zen practice is not an academic exercise. It is a common understanding that Zen is a special transmission outside words and letters. Yet, it is also clear that the same Zen teachers who railed to their students against books and readings had studied widely and continued to do so, and further established monasteries where their study was a regular part of the schedule. They were not hypocrites.
The study of the Dharma complements and enriches our practice of Zazen, our relationships, and the life of the community. It provides a common framework for our lives together, another dimension in relating to each other. Not only the precepts, the Four Noble Truths, and concepts such as emptiness, impermanence, non-self, and vow, but the koans and stories of Zen masters encourage and inspire us. Still, the old masters knew we could also become drawn into this rich literature and lose our primary objective, our direct, immediate experience of the reality, here and now. Their harsh words about words and letters, their provocative and often mocking encounters with their students, were not denying the power of language, but disrupting its enchantment, awakening us even down to the present day. A group, even a warmly connected meditation group, not firmly grounded in the wisdom, compassion, and clarity of the Buddha Dharma, is just a community center, not a Sangha.
You have an extra space after the A.
Yeah, I just fixed that. This is why I have it open in Affinity.
Beyond meditation, spiritual friendship, and a social bond as community, we encounter Dharma and form a deepening relationship with its treasures, not only through reading, reflection, and inquiry, but as a social relational activity together. The powerful teachings of the Dharma permeate our engagement with each other.
The first encounter with the writings in the Dharma, for most folks, is often in our short morning service following daily zazen, where we chant verses and excerpts from our Zen tradition, described in Chapter 13. In classes and intensives, we share core teachings from Zen tradition and connect them with our everyday contemporary lives. We have an ongoing book study group called Depth and Practice for collaborative reading of Dharma teachings from the Buddha right up to the present day. Dale Wright, Joanna Macy, Peter Hershak, Norman Fisher, Musang, and so on. In our one-year precepts program, we explore the application of what the Buddha described as these pristine gifts in our lived experience.
So, of course, reading books and studying words can distract us and provide a ready escape from messy, complicated, confusing lives, from ancient times right up to the present moment, with our noses glued to our screens. What the old masters are telling us is look up, be present for your life, for each other, for this moment.
Maybe we can read this little ryokan poem.
Even if you consume as many books, as the sands of the Ganges, it is not as good as reality catching one verse of Zen. Here it is. Everything is in the heart. Translator John Stevens, Dewdrops on the Lotus Leaf, Zen Poems of Ryokan.
Ryokan. Mhm.
Right. Yeah. I like that.
So, of course, reading books and studying words can distract us and provide a ready escape
We're in,
from
we're in the
messy.
next paragraph.
Next, oh yes,
Unfortunately,
I'm so sorry. I'm very disoriented this evening. Unfortunately, some have taken their words literally, believing they have no need for the wisdom and encouragement of the Dharma, no need of any reading or study, and this too is a special kind of loneliness, of starvation. We need to be nourished, supported, and actively engaged with these teachings, which have given so much meaning and purpose to millions of lives for over 2,500 years.
Still, they are only black shapes on white paper if they are not brought into our lives, our present experience right here. This means relating with the teachings just as with a person, with openness, curiosity, and possibility. We need to investigate worldviews that may be very different from our own, in languages and eras very different from our own. Soon we grow more and more familiar with the teachings of the Dharma, more comfortable with exploring how they resonate in our lives. This, in turn, permeates our meditation practice, our encounter with ourselves, with richness and depth. The Dharma comes alive, leaps off the page, and grabs us by the hair, saying over and over, "You must live this life."
In, in this way, the rich tradition of Zen infuses our shared conversations and the consciousness of the Sangha, still in an intimate relationship with the Dharma, as is sparked by direct encounter in lived experience, often in the immediacy of practice discussion with a Dharma teacher.
the encounter with the Dharma teacher. A Dharma teacher is a special kind of spiritual friend, someone experienced and skillful in the way you are traveling, someone committed to supporting you on your journey. While there are lots of opportunities to watch a teacher in action in the Sangha, to listen to their Dharma talks, to have an informal community brunch or movie night, it's also important to take advantage of the opportunity to meet face-to-face with teachers in practice discussion, a brief, formal interview that is a special kind of encounter, not only with the teacher, but with the living Dharma.
So maybe let's do the facing page, and then we'll come back.
During the week of Rahatsu one year, Peg offered a week-long intensive at Appamada, during which time participants could come and go as their schedules allow. I believe it was organized into 30-minute sitting periods, some creative writing time and tea time, but no formal teaching. There was an eye gaze exercise offered during certain of the sitting periods. There was an opportunity to sit face to face with Peg in the Zendo while maintaining eye gaze with each other, not speaking or otherwise interacting. I'm not sure how long the exercise lasted, whether it was 5 minutes or more. What I do recall vividly is how powerful the experience was for me.
I had been attending programs at Appamada for a few years, but I had not experienced this. I had begun by attending inquiry with Flint regularly, then 9 months later, a residential intensive, followed by participation in sitting and Dharma talks, usually led by Peg on Sundays. Peg had seemed so very knowledgeable and friendly, but distant. During this eye gaze encounter, I experienced a vast yet intimate, all inclusive presence I had not known or perceived before. I felt completely seen and held unconditionally. I wanted more of that.
I started requesting regular practice discussion with Peg. Sometimes we just sat, with no exchange of words, or I could talk and she could listen, holding that vast space with such care. These were deeply valuable exchanges for me, for exceeding the discussion oriented toward solving problems or getting advice.
Some years later, experiencing profound grief, the wordless refuge of vast big mind, which I discovered in Peg's presence, was essential, robustly grounding me at a very critical time. The experience of deep connection with a teacher, in some ways not personal, but very intimate, has been transformative for me. Gratefully, I have since then experienced it with others, both as receiver and giver. For me, this is the true heart of our shared relational practice of Zen. Darcy S., Sangha member. So I think it's here's how we describe is where we are, right?
No, I think it was above that. Oh, yes, that's where.
Here's how we describe, yeah.
Yeah. Here's how we describe practice discussion on our website. Some of these forms are a bit different for those who we see remotely on Zoom. This is about the in-person experience.
It might be helpful to explain a bit about practice discussion, individual meetings with the teacher as part of Zen practice for new folks and anyone else who might be a little mystified about it. Our Zen practice at Appamada, as we understand it, is relational practice. It is about connections and the flow of energy and information in our encounters with each other, not solitary contemplative achievement or individual self-improvement. In our view, the work of Zazen is in service of our relationships in and with the world. It is about enlightening concourse, the liberating possibilities in our coming together, and is not confined to a personal experience of exalted states of consciousness. For this reason, regular communication with teachers and Sangha members is central to our practice. But there's a lot of misunderstanding about this process.
Could I ask a question? What is the meaning of concourse?
It means a coming together. It means a together in conversation, basically. So its opposite is, or alternate would be discourse, where we're debating different points of view or discussing things. This is about minds coming together and meeting. Does that make sense?
Was
Yes.
it in that book
Thank you.
on community?
It's in Peter Hershock,
Oh,
Liberating Intimacy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
and did you just read?
Yes.
The rule of thumb Joko established is that her students would see her once a week if they were new to Zen practice. Once they have been practicing for 2 years or so, they would see her every 2 weeks. she found that new students need a little more support for the challenges they meet in establishing their practice. Practice interviews with Joko were quite short, usually 10 minutes or so, although this could vary a bit, and they focus on the person's practice. If the issue is complex and requires more explanation or background, however, Joko would usually recommend that the student make an appointment with her outside of Dayasan, as practice discussion was called there, when there is more time for providing a context. We follow this model.
Practice discussion is not therapy, nor is it a substitute for therapy. It is not professional coaching. However, any of the issues that might also any might also be addressed by therapy or coaching can have implications or opportunities for practice. So actually, there are no inappropriate topics for practice discussion. You do not, in fact, need to have a topic, question, or issue. The fundamental purpose of practice discussion is the liberating possibilities of the encounter itself. Of course, practice discussion is always optional, but it can be extremely helpful and even necessary, as it is quite possible in practice to sail confidently off in a misguided direction, or to torture yourself needlessly with self-doubt, anxiety, or confusion.
Practice discussion is available during Zazen periods by request. Sunday mornings, there will be an announcement at the start of each period so that folks who want to see a Dharma teacher for practice discussion can come and sit in line in the side room, then see the teacher in turn. If you have a special need to see a teacher, please email a request or let the monitor know before the start of Zazen. Senior students who are Zen mentors also see people for practice discussion by appointment.
The form for practice discussion is fairly simple.
Can I just say something? Should you put here, since we're doing it now, during Zazen or by appointment?
Yes, but I think that this is from the website, so it would have to be changed on the website.
Well, we could do that.
The form for practice discussion is fairly simple. As I said at the beginning, this is about in-person practice discussion, not practice discussion on Zoom. The form for practice discussion is fairly simple. When it is your turn, please rise mindfully and come quietly to the door of the practice discussion room, waiting for the bell. Enter and close the door, then right from the door, make a bow toward the altar. Come to the end of the bowing mat and do a standing bow to the teacher. Then sit and the practice discussion begins. When it is over, give a seated bow to the teacher, then stand, arrange the cushions and make a standing bow to the teacher. There is no altar bow when you leave.
Why?
Any,
Oh, sorry, I have a question. Why is it important to remark that there is no bow to the altar?
Because so many people do it. So
And
many
why? Mhm.
people think that you make a bow when you leave, but you don't make a bow when you leave to the altar.
But
Even in the Zendo.
Even in the Zendo, yeah.
At some places you do.
That's why. That's why people do it, is because at some places they've learned to do that.
Yeah,
so
I'm
that
in a lot.
my question could be why in Appamada we don't do that?
Because it's not done in the Soto Zen tradition.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's done in other schools of Buddhism and other schools of Zen. But primarily, I think people get it from yoga.
Or if they come from a Christian tradition.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe.
Many, not all, but there are some
Hey,
where that is what you do. Well, some denominations where that is what you do.
yeah.
Any topic that is meaningful for you is fine for practice discussion with a teacher. You may not have a particular question or issue. It is still important to meet, even to just maintain and support you in your practice. Often something will arise in the course of meeting that is relevant to your practice path. Please use this precious time of meeting wisely. I'm sorry, but I'm confused. If you set up an appointment to talk with the teacher, then why would you set up an appointment if you don't have a question or an issue?
Because you have a practice of regularly meeting with the teacher. So
Oh,
you don't, it's not required to have a topic or a question, but you still want to meet.
But also, you might feel a genuine uneasiness.
Right. And it might be that once you're there, it becomes clear to you what it is that you want to ask about or what it is that you want to talk about. So if you have this regular connection, it's like if you have a good friend, you don't have to have a topic in mind to want to have lunch with them, right?
sure.
You just
Sure.
want to be together and spend time. It's like that.
Thank you.
I guess we want to.
I'm not sure whose turn it is.
I think it's my turn.
Oh, okay.
We hope this helps clarify our practice discussion format. We look forward to our work together. Of course, since the pandemic, we have been offering online practice discussion via Zoom. This requires some special arrangements, but it is one way we can support folks who live at a distance. But dramatic encounter, fleeting moments of shared insight, even deep bonds of friendship between two Zen students do not necessarily create a true Sangha, a resilient fabric of mutual respect, trust, aspiration, appreciation, and care that forms an enduring community, a sense that we belong to each other on this path. For that, we needed to develop a social architecture.
Go ahead, you can finish it.
This requires some fresh ways of seeing, a systems perspective, an ecological view, and design thinking for emergent architecture. Let's plunge in.
Okay, we should stop there probably. It's 8:00.
That's a beautiful
And this
photo.
is the end of this chapter.
The end of this chapter.
What?
I'm most curious about this chapter. I was wondering how it's striking people, and not only those people who might be new to the Sangha, but Anne and Kim, who have been with us for such a long time, and whether this rings true to them or feels like this is what we're about. So those are the things that I was sort of wondering about.
Okay, I can read.
Okay.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around a biography, which was the first part of the book, and this part about the practices. I'm wondering if more weaving is needed and what it would take, what form it would take. It might be nice to read a potential dialogue between a teacher and student. One I remember is when I told Peg I was worried about 5 things and then proceeded to describe them. She simply responded that I was certainly worried about a lot of things. This taught me about taking the backward step, where we get to see ourselves from a slightly distant perspective. Some might think her comment was lacking in compassion. I saw it as compassionate, liberating me from my self-centered dream. Do you want that, Peg?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I will send it to you.
I mean, I can speak to the question. I didn't really write about that. I mean, I sort of started writing about what we read, and then it always goes off into and. Um, yeah, I really like this chapter. I mean, this chapter really spoke to me, that I think you described really well. The relationality, the importance of that, that was really well fleshed out in various different parts of the reading. I think the pieces by the Sangha members are very helpful in that. I was really struck by the sentence that we belong to each other as the Sangha, which was kind of my takeoff point for my writing. And how that's a difficult concept for me. I mean, that's not a difficult concept, but more a difficult thing to swallow. But I think it is different than the more biographical first part of the book, but I was very engaged with this, and felt like you were describing something that was unique, and the description was very complete.
That's helpful. Yeah, it's really helpful to hear that.
Well, I would say, and also you talked about, I was struck by the points where you talked about the study, that the study of the Dharma is also really important. And that seemed to weave really well together to me. It made sense to me in my own practice.
Yeah. I wanted to make it clear that that's another form of encounter. But encounter with our Zen ancestors, with contemporary teachers who have conveyed in this way what they understand. Yeah.
There's all those things where you need to learn them and then forget them. And I think you described well the reason, for that, or that doing one or the other doesn't work. That they didn't mean to ignore them, and also that it is something beyond just scholarship, or different than scholarship.
Yeah. It's got to be a support for practice, not an end in itself.
Yeah, I found that you did that really well. To describe how things are integrated into the practice, and that it's not all one way or the other, which is something that is not the same as in other practices. And I think that was really good. I do have a small suggestion, because I agree with Kim and Ann, well, with Kim and Ann, that it is so very different from what came before it. I would suggest that you have a visual break, a section break. So you have a page that, I don't know, says section 2, or just something, or it even doesn't have to say anything, just be a pretty page, and some kind of small introductory thing that shows that you're shifting in a way from one thing to the next thing, because it's not out of place, and it doesn't feel like it's not cohesive exactly, but it is rather a startling switch. And I don't think you need much of an explanation. I just think it might be good if you wanted to have a break, a visual break with a saying, or just a break.
At the start of the chapter?
Yeah, wherever I think, because this is at the start of that chapter.
Yeah.
Wherever you start to talk about people and practice, and
that is, there should be a transition from chapter 10, which ends with So naturally, we wondered, Flint and I, how could we cultivate true engagement, this quality of
Yeah.
mind, the care of Appamada in a sangha of householders coming and going on different days and at different times, and spending most of their time together, sitting in stillness and silence. So this chapter is the answer to that question.
Well, and that I think could just be in the break page, like centered on the section, whatever section break, however you do it or want to do it, just that it's not even, well, yeah, I can say the paragraph, just that little bit to show that that's where you're going to now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I don't know. I am not a book designer.
No, yeah, that's the end. That's the end of the previous chapter, which is all the ends of the chapter should lead into the next chapter. Like the end of this leads into the next chapter, which is going to be a very theoretical chapter, but it has to do with how we see things, and how we understand a sangha as from these different perspectives. So
Yeah.
that again is another kind of shift in view. Well, what I'm trying to do is give us many dimensions of what we're doing, which is quite different from what's done in other places, so that people can get kind of a richer understanding anyway of what we're
Yeah.
trying.
I think that's wonderful, and I do love the way you do that and explain everything. It really made me feel like I knew a lot more about not just Appamada here, but Zen in particular, and the goals of where Appamada, is focusing. I think that was great.
That's really
Yeah.
helpful. Really, really, really helpful. Yeah. Yeah. Len?
Thank you. Well, for me, I really enjoyed this chapter. I enjoyed much more the book. I don't remember exactly where in my mind is where Flint chapter is explained. What I remember is that other Zen teachings or theory or concepts are introduced mixed with the story about what's going on. And this chapter just brought to me very beautiful experiences with concepts as the Dharma transmission and the wordless thing and an encounter without, this encounter that occurs just with its own energy between the teacher and the students. And it really reminded me beautiful books that we have read of Zen teachers. And that was very valuable for me. Like this book includes this, so it speaks to different readers.
Mm. Mm.
And I wrote a little something that I may share.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Let's see, what is it? It is, I wrote, the most beautiful things I have read in my life come from Zen. They don't come from Shakespeare or Edgar Allan Poe. They come from Zen teachers and Zen practitioners. What is more intimate than sharing our breaths unnoticeably while we share our paths? What is more beautiful than a transmission without letters, without words, without anything that could be a constraint, a barrier, a limit to liberation?
That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
That's lovely. Really cool.
So there are a couple of things that I would like to mention. To me, there were two things that were the most impactful. When we're children and when we're in school and we're in class, we may raise our hand because we want to ask a question. And we may be feeling very uneasy because we're afraid of being laughed at. Or what if the teacher simply dismisses us and not. So I like what you have done there, where you have set the stepping stones of what it is, how to make a safe environment for you to be able to ask questions without that fear, because nobody's going to laugh at you, nobody's going to be diminishing of you. So I really like that, because it is wonderful when one finally goes to a class where you feel comfortable with the teacher, with your classmates. Is a beautiful experience. So I really like that. And now there was something that I did not like, and it was a comment from one of the Sangha members, I believe, and it was referring to a person that left because their heart was small. And
That was from Thich Nhat Hanh.
yes, so this is what I wrote. Not a little heart. A heart can be great or small. Sometimes it can have grit, but others could have their grit beaten out of them. We can have a swollen heart, black and blue, in need of time to heal. A heart can be great and small. Green and yellow may appear as the bruising recedes, as the swelling heals, and the heart goes back to its normal size. A red heart and hurt after a very long time, smaller in size, greater for what it has lived through, wiser from the experience, kinder. I don't know the circumstances of what happened with this person, but I do want to point out that sometimes it's not about having a big or a small heart, but what we have gone through before we came here. And it may have been a very triggering experience that that person may not have been able to handle. So that is just my take on it. And as I have designed several books, I will ask you this question, Peg. The rest of the book, is it going to be about the practice?
Yes. So the next chapter is the chapter that is about new ways of seeing, of understanding what you're looking at when you're looking at a sangha. And then the chapter after that is about what kinds of structures we put in place as we had to solve these kinds of dilemmas as the sangha was developing. As the sangha was developing, certain dilemmas would arise, and then we'd have to think about, is a structure needed for that? So that's the next chapter, and the chapter after that is about our programming and what kinds of programs we've developed, and how those programs have evolved. So things like this one, depth and practice, or like the precepts program, or like our morning practice, meditation practice. And those.
Then, oh, sorry, continue.
Go ahead. That's it. And then following that will be a chapter that's called Tributaries, about the other resources.
So I do agree with what they were saying before about having a page that signals a different take, like in practice, because the first part is so personal. And then the second part is more, okay, now we're doing this, and this is how we're doing it. So it's just a transition also to because it can be jarring for the reader to go from very personal to not personal. But I do believe it's a beautiful transition what you read from the chapter before. So it's a beautiful ending for the personal part of it. And then you have a beautiful page with, you can have like a small title page, like in practice or however you want to do it. But it is kind of to show the reader this is a new section.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because my sense of this is probably this is going to be two books. So the first part, the personal part, would be that first book. The second book,
Oh,
all of these more sort of practical and direct things. They'd be volume 1 and volume 2, so they'd be part of a larger story. But it would be clear that they were distinct books. So if people are more interested in sort of the autobiographical parts of it, that first volume would be what they would be drawn to. And if they're more interested in how do we run a sangha, how do we create the kind of the quality of experience that you have at Appamada, how do we do that functionally? How do we practically, pragmatically do that? That would be the second volume.
well, that works.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think so too.
Yeah, that would actually start with chapter 9. When we, yeah, hold on, I can tell you what chapter 9 is about. Yeah, chapter 9 is starting with ordinary mind, and then the evolution into Appamada comes right after that in chapter 10. So that's a possibility I've been thinking about a lot because they are very qualitatively different in terms of their their overall tone and structure. They're very different.
Mhm. Well, and I guess you can have a special edition with two together, with the whole thing,
Yeah.
volume 1 and 2.
We have a box
Yeah.
set. Yeah, yeah, that's clearly possible.
The last thing that I would like to mention is that when you are explaining how to do, oh, please forgive me if I say this wrong, the walk and talk.
Uh-huh.
I said it right? Yay. Okay, so in something like that, personally, um, I would prefer to see the different steps in bullet points
Oh,
instead of in a paragraph.
uh-huh.
Mm.
But
Okay.
I have to say the way you wrote it was very clear.
Good.
So this is just me
Yeah,
and my own learning style.
yeah, I can easily do that. Yeah.
But I really liked it and I learned a lot. And I also understand more because something that was really bugging me for a long time was I'm here from Zoom. I have
Mhm.
never been there in person. I have never met anybody in person, but I feel a kinship and a friendship that has developed through time. And now I understand that it's part of the Sangha. It was done the way things are done are to foster that type of relationship. So I'm not going crazy. And I really appreciate it. And for me, it's very special because I don't get to go out and have been able to make new friends is something very special. So thank you for that. And kudos.
Mhm.
Well, I'm just trying to really be faithful in describing what I think is what we've done and what we're about. So if I miss the mark, Ann and Kim, you should tell me because You have been here long enough to see what's really happening on the ground, and if this looks like I've given a faithful rendition of what we're about.
No, I don't think you've missed the mark, and also it suggests that you've thought about what we're doing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've given a lot of thought to what we're doing. Yeah. So yeah, bear with me through the next chapter. Yeah, Milan.
I know we are out of time, but I was wondering if there is a part, or I don't remember we have read about the structure of the program, because it's very holistic. And for me, when I was looking for Zen centers in Austin, Appamada was in the top 3, and then I went once and I never went to the rest of the list because I did all the activities, and it was just great for me. The variety of creative and female research and this Monday night and all of that. So I don't know if you are planning to write on that.
See if that's what you read in the next 2 chapters. See if that's what you're looking for is in the next 2 chapters. And if not, then let me know and we'll see where it needs to go.
Thank you. And the last thing was, is there a part where you speak about the councils, the structure of the councils?
Yes, that's in chapter 13. So our next chapter is chapter 12. Chapter 13, I talk about the councils. There are 4 things in chapter 13: the councils, the generosity initiative, the composition of our board, which is unusual, and what's the councils and generosity initiative? Oh, our succession plan. So how we plan for succession. So those are the kind of structures that we've put in place to make Appamada sustainable far into the future.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's always such a pleasure to be with you and to hear your voices. So thanks for helping with this book.
Thank you for writing it so we could help with it.
Well, I'm trying.
You're not trying, you're doing.
Did it.
We're on the downhill slope.